Good morning. Anton and I have the goal of coming on once a week and sharing one of his deals where he is helping sellers and buyers alike. Anton, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, and
Yes.
glad to be on. And look forward to talking through today and every week about the uh, homestead buyers that we're helping get into homes that without using a bank or without requiring traditional credit, and still able to get in and get the American dream of purchasing a home.
Yes, absolutely. And just the much less pain of purchasing a home happens much faster this way. So your first deal that we're going to talk about this week is actually in Kansas City. And tell us about how you found that deal.
Yeah, this is an amazing story. A wholesale partner of mine had located this property. It was a seller who was in the unfortunate position of being significantly behind on their mortgage, and they were in need of leaving the country due to a relocation. And this stone around their neck was causing a significant amount of pain for them. So working with the wholesale partner, we were able to find a solution to their problem. What we ended up doing is purchasing their home by taking over their existing payments on their mortgage. We were able to catch up the past due payments, which cleaned up their credit for it, and we're also able to give them the funds that they needed to complete their move. So they went from having a significant liquidity crisis to having the funds that they needed to move their family to the next stage in life.
Yes, and that's really incredible because not only since I work so many transactions with you, I know that you not only cut up their mortgage, you not only took over their payments so they're no longer kind of bearing that weight, and you're helping improve their credit. You secured them on the property. And so you almost gain a partnership with the seller, would you say, in creating this win between the two of you, so that they move on to the next chapter with a little more confidence that everything is going to go well?
Absolutely. Partnership is the right word. I refer to it at times that you're entering into a long-term relationship in a lot of ways akin to getting married in a sense. And that's that relationship of trust and accountability is a huge part of allowing them to move forward confident that the problem is solved, not that it's going to come back and come back later in a worse way, and that it's truly solved. So that aspect of long-term partnership is incredibly critical to these types of transactions. And then also working with a set of partners that are equally motivated towards making sure that that's solved.
Absolutely. And I know that on a lot of your properties, you work with investors so that they can, they help bring the money so that you can pay down you make the initial payment, and you can close. And it kind of provides an opportunity for the investors that work with you to be a part of the transaction, be a part of the process, yet not actually have to do the operations, like maybe if they have more money than they have time or et cetera, like that. And so in those moments, as you're approaching the close and stuff like that, how do you work with your investors on these types of transactions just to like manage communication and expectations? Like, what are you looking for in a good investing partner in that situation?
So, a good investing partner in this type of transaction is looking for, as you noted, time, less time, and better returns. But communication is still absolutely critical. That's keeping partners appraised of the progress of the transaction, and also security is critical. That communication and agreement, is paramount, but without having appropriate security documentation to ensure that all the investor partners are as protected as everyone else, utilizing deeds of trust, promissory notes, and when appropriate, other types of agreements to make sure that investor is protected.
Absolutely. Okay, so you're able to close the property. What happens after on this specific property? How did the next steps work for you after closing with the seller?
So after this property was closed, the seller, as I noted earlier, was leaving the country. So they moved out of the property, and moved on with their lives. They get periodic updates on the progress, and they can see to obviously ensure that this, which is obviously still on their credit, is performing properly. And that also applies to the private money lender that brought the funding to make this closing possible. In this case, it was a private money lender that decided they wanted to make a long-term investment and get mailbox money every month for a long period of time. So they get a check each and every month that shows up in the mailbox, and they're able to take that to the bank.
Absolutely. And I want to circle back after we talk about your buyer, but I want to circle back on that process of how we ensure that all the parties get paid, how everyone kind of stays informed, and it's a very amazing process that you've set up on that side. So once you have your once everyone's starting to get their payments and stuff like that, how did you connect with the buyer for this property?
This property was, like many others, marketed through Facebook Marketplace, and this was placed on to Facebook Marketplace in Kansas City with information about options for either leasing the property with an opportunity to purchase it in the future, or the opportunity to purchase the property now with seller financing. Purchasing it without the need to have a bank bring credit, have access to credit union or a bank or something of that nature. That's an incredibly powerful tool to reach buyers that either don't want to or can't go through the painful traditional process.
Absolutely. And just for everyone's clarity, you still qualify your buyers, right? Like, it's not just they say they can buy and so they get to buy, or they have the money for the down payment. You still qualify your buyers to make sure that they are actually able to be that the payments make sense for them personally and stuff like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, absolutely. Not going through the traditional bank process doesn't mean anyone with any form of any situation can purchase. Obviously, that it's not good for someone to get into a home that they can't afford. That's a lose-lose situation. That's a loss from obviously from a seller's perspective, from the investor perspective, but ultimately it's worse. The worst person that it is for is the buyer, because that's very disruptive to their lives to get them into a home that they can't afford. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the nuts and bolts of it, but one of the most important things that I do and my team does is have a direct conversation with the potential buyer to ask them, do you qualify on paper? You qualify through what what we've run you through and the validations that we've done. But do you feel good about this transaction? Do you think that you have a strong probability of succeeding? Because this is a lose-lose. And if this doesn't work out, and neither one of us want to be in that position. So that's there's that aspect of it that obviously a bank or another type of institution can't do, but the paperwork is important is important for the verification as well. It's a verification of assets and income that could be utilizing bank statements, if there is any tax, past tax returns, or obviously if you have traditional income from a job or something of that nature, and then also looking at what are your past what is your past credit history. That's not the most important factor, obviously, but it is still a factor that we do look at. But we're able to look at the situation holistically. It's not a black and white box the way it might be in the traditional sense. There's a lot more flexibility to look at mitigating factors for something that might be a blemish too big to overlook for people in a stricter model.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of our buyers are actually like independent contractors. So the reality is at the end of the day, their goal is to report as little income as possible on their taxes so that they can reduce their tax liability. But this makes it very difficult for them to buy traditionally, because it's actually looking like they're not creating income, and they could actually be creating a significant amount of income. And so I really do like that there's a far more individualized look at each buyer, just to make sure that we're meeting them where they're at, instead of completely writing them off just because they don't fit in a standard box.
Absolutely. I like to say that I don't think that making large tax payments to the IRS shouldn't be a prerequisite to purchasing a home. For people that are taking advantage of legal and proper tax deductions, shouldn't be penalized for that simply because they are choosing, they're justifiably choosing, not to make large payments to the IRS. And, that's one of the things that people that are not in the direct mold, face those challenges with, working with a traditional lending situation.
Absolutely. Okay. So am I correct that you found your buyer for this one on Facebook Marketplace?
Yeah, that was the source of the buyer for this. And this this family ended up being a buyer, but they didn't reach out originally as a buyer because they looked at something. They asked actually initially, can I rent the property? And they didn't think they could buy a home. And through conversation with them, we're able to explain to them the way in which, even in their current situation where they didn't believe they could buy a home because they didn't fit the traditional box, they couldn't go through those pieces, uh, explain to them how through seller finance and through the programs that we do, that they were able to buy a home. So they were converted from someone who thought they were finding their next 1-year rental to someone who's buying a long-term home for themselves.
That's fantastic. And so once you find your buyer, and I imagine that was quite a gift for them to go from, we're trying to rent somewhere to we're actually going to be able to own this. And so once you guys create your terms, which are also really nice, like when you go get a traditional loan, obviously you have very specific terms, and with the way that you do your financing, it actually allows for a lot of creativity, even with your buyer, giving them additional flexibility on how they purchase the property.
Yeah, absolutely. We're able to craft a financing package that best fits needs. In some cases, that is someone who has access to a significant amount of money to put down, but has a very fixed or determined income that requires a relatively low monthly payment, or it could be someone who has access to a relatively small down payment for whatever reason, but has a strong monthly cash flow and is able to pay a higher monthly payment, and that's a better fit for their budget. So understanding budget and situation is one of the first parts of any conversation with a potential buyer, because that's how the solution gets crafted. Instead of in a traditional sense, you're going to show up and they're going to tell you you're going to put this much down, you're going to pay this much per month. Our first question is, what works for you? And that that's a huge difference, and that's a huge difference and a huge benefit to the path in this situation.
Absolutely. So you're able to curate kind of the perfect loan package for them entering into this home. And then how do you ensure, so now you have a lot of moving pieces, okay? So you have your original seller who you took over the mortgage payments for and they moved overseas. You have your private investor, which helped you close and funded the property to get to that point. And then you have your non-traditional buyer who is coming in with their personalized loan package. And so it probably feels like, if you're not in this space normally, that's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things going on. How do you make sure that all of the things get taken care of on the back end to make sure that the right amount is received and people are being paid appropriately? How do you set that up?
Yeah, the personalization and such that happen in this space is important, and that flexibility is important in that space. But having the right processes in place and using appropriate licensed and bonded third parties to conduct the transactions are important. So all of the closings are done using traditional escrow processes, title companies, to ensure that the funds that move through a real estate closing are sent to the right people and in the right amounts. And then in the long term, just like a traditional mortgage that is handled by a servicing company. All of these seller finance notes are also handled by a third-party servicing company. We have an amazing partner in a Southern Loan Servicing that handles all of our transactions, and they ensure that payments are made on time and accurately to the to an investor, to the underlying mortgage, and also from a buyer perspective, they're sending to a trusted and reputable third party that ensures that obviously their funds are credited correctly. They have access to a mortgage portal, and they get their appropriate tax reporting at the end of the year as well. So, as I said earlier, there's lots of things that can be creative to this, but having the right boxes and processes and security and assurances are critical. There, as you noted, there are many parties involved and a lot of trust that's involved. And by working transparently with partners, that trust is a critical part, but trust and verify. And we put everything is clear on paper and clearly validated with third parties that are the referee to make sure that everything is fair and there's never a he said she said moment that can come up in transactions where you don't have those neutral parties.
That's fantastic. So really all of those moving pieces are managed by a third party professional who kind of manages all the money, make sure everybody gets their monthly statements. I mean, we have sellers that are set up with the portal so that they can see that the servicing company is actually paying the underlying mortgage. The buyer who is very much aware that you purchase properties creatively, because I know that you completely operate with transparency, so everyone is aware of what's going on. And so they know that because they're paying the payment every month, that payment isn't just going to go missing. They know that is actually going to the underlying mortgage. And so you build this whole system that creates confidence and trust between you and each deal obviously has numerous partners, long-term relationships that you're working on with each of these deals. And so it's very exciting that you're able to provide this opportunity for sellers and buyers and investors. And you're really solving a lot of need between the different parties and meeting them kind of where they're at. And so if someone was going to look towards doing business with you, whether they want to buy a property, whether they want to invest with you to become a partner in the deal, or they're wanting to sell a house creatively, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you to kind of see how you can help them in their situation?
So the best way is for anyone that wants to reach out. You see below Anton C. Hartman, Instagram, YouTube, at gmail.com. All of those options are excellent. Work regularly with investors, with sellers, with buyers, and I'm not always the solution to your problem. I might not be your buyer. I might not be the right investment for you, or I might not be the right seller for you. But I'm always, if I'm not, I'm going to be transparent about that, and then also try and point you in another direction to another investor or another type of situation that might work well for you. Another thing I wanted to kind of step back for a second is that one of the other pieces in creative transactions is in traditional real estate transactions, when there are problems during an escrow, for example, someone needs to sell another home in order to to be able to close on their new property, and that's that isn't happening for some reason. That has fallen out, or they simply haven't been able to find a buyer. In this transaction that occurred, the person who was buying the property had an older, smaller home that they needed to sell in order to be able to purchase this property. And after several months, that hadn't been able to happen. It had been on the MLS and hadn't found a home, hadn't found a buyer. So in order to help facilitate them getting into a new property, actually ended up purchasing their old property creatively. I took over the payments. I took over the payments on that property, and actually a portion of the down payment that they made on the new property was actually the down payment that I made on their old property. So that's another great thing that can happen in this space that wouldn't happen with a traditional bank. The bank's not going to buy your last property because you're to get your new property closed.
Absolutely. Yes. And we are definitely going to dive into that one next week, because I think that was such a creative solution to the problem that they were facing. And they're really fun couple in general. But all right. Well, I thank you, Anton, for coming on today and talking to us about your first deal in Kansas City. And is there anything else that you'd like to add before we finish up?
It's great to sit here and be able to talk about a deal where there was a buyer that was helped, there was a seller that was helped, there's an investor that was that had an investment opportunity. There was a wholesaler that was made some money as a part of this as well. So if you look at that, 4 different parties, 4 different families that benefited from this transaction. It's a true win for a whole bunch of parties, and it's an amazing thing that we can do here in the creative space to help a whole bunch of people. Literally, a dozen or more people with just one transaction, and that's amazing, and it's wonderful to be able to tell that story and give others the opportunity to understand and be one of those people in a future transaction.
Absolutely.
So thank you for having me on this morning.
Of course. Thank you.